Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And it's really not difficult for me to speak without a teleprompter because the teleprompter just doesn't work at all. Nevertheless, I am very glad to be here with you. And so, when you speak more sincerely from the heart, I can only say that the person who operates this teleprompter is now in big trouble. Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here, Madam President, Mr. and Mrs. President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. It has been 6 years since I last stood in this great hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace. During my first term, since that day, the weapons of war have destroyed the peace I established on 2 continents. The era of calm and stability has been replaced by one of the greatest crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the previous administration have led our country into a series of recurring disasters. A year ago, our country was in deep trouble, but today, just 8 months after the start of my administration, we are the most successful country in the world, and no other country even comes close. America has the strongest economy, the most secure borders, the most powerful military, the strongest alliances, and the greatest spirit among all nations on earth. This is truly the golden age of America. We are rapidly overcoming the economic disaster we inherited from the previous administration, including devastating price increases and record inflation. We have never had inflation like this before. Under my leadership, energy costs, gas prices, food prices, and mortgage rates have all gone down, and inflation was defeated. The only thing that's going up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. In fact, in the past short period, it has reached a record high 48 times. Growth is accelerating rapidly, manufacturing is booming, and the stock market, as I said, is performing better than ever before. Almost everyone in this room is benefiting. And importantly, workers' wages are growing at the fastest rate in the last 60 years. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? During 4 years of Biden's presidency, less than $1 trillion of new investments have come into the United States in just 8 months since I took office. We have already secured commitments and actual funds totaling $17 trillion. Consider this, in 4 years, less than $1 trillion, but in just 8 months, it's $17 trillion. It's being invested in the United States, and now these investments are coming from all corners of the world. We implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the most extensive deregulation, making this country the best place on earth to do business again. And many of those present in this room are investing in America, and over these 8 months, it has proven to be an extremely profitable investment. In my first term, I created the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy in the entire history of the world. And now I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's really much bigger and even better. The numbers are significantly surpassing my record-breaking first term. At our southern border, we successfully repelled a massive invasion. And for 4 consecutive months now, that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal migrants allowed in and entering our country has been 0. It's hard to believe because if you look back just a year ago, millions and millions of people poured in here from all over the world, from prisons, from psychiatric institutions, drug dealers, they were coming from all over the world. They just flooded into our country because of the Biden administration's ridiculous open border policies. Our message is very simple. If you enter the United States illegally, you will go to jail or be sent back to where you came from, or maybe even further. Do you understand what that means? I want to thank the country of Salvador for the successful and professional work they have done in taking in and imprisoning so many criminals who came into our country. Under the previous administration, this number hit a record high and all are being deported. We have no choice, and other countries have no choice because other countries are in exactly the same situation with immigration. It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected again in a way it never was before. Remember, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or even a year ago, we were a laughingstock around the world. At the NATO summit in June, almost all NATO members officially committed to increasing their defense spending at my request from 2% to 5% of gross domestic product. This made our alliance much stronger and more powerful than ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and restore our partnerships in the Persian Gulf. And now I believe our valuable ties with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries have become closer than ever before. My administration has made one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many, many others. In the same way, in just 7 months, I ended 7 wars that were considered endless. They said it was impossible to end them. They said they could never be resolved. Some lasted 31 years. 2 of them for 31 years, 1 lasted 36 years, another 28. I ended 7 wars. And in every case, they raged devastatingly, taking the lives of countless people. This includes countries like Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, Congo and Rwanda. It was a brutal, bloody war, as well as Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, as well as Armenia and Azerbaijan. This concerned everyone. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no country had ever done anything like this. And I did it in 7 months. That had never happened before, nothing like it. It's an honor for me that I was able to do this. I regret having to handle these issues myself rather than having someone else do it. The United Nations, and unfortunately in all cases, the United Nations didn't even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each of these countries, and not once did I even get a phone call from the United Nations offering to help bring things to a conclusion. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that stopped right in the middle on the way up. If the First Lady hadn't been in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We held our ground. And also a teleprompter that didn't work. Those are the 2 things I got from the United Nations: a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. It's working now. It just turned on. Thanks. I think I'll do it differently since it's easier. Thanks. At that moment, I didn't think about it because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. It's about saving lives and ending wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't for us. They weren't there. I thought about it afterwards, not during those negotiations, which were quite difficult. If that's the case, then what's the purpose of the United Nations' existence? The United Nations has such enormous potential. I've always said that. It really has huge, huge potential, but for the most part, at least right now, it's not even coming close to realizing it. All they seem to do is write a very strongly worded letter and then never follow up on it. Those are empty words, and empty words don't stop wars. The only thing that can stop a war is action, Now, after all these wars have ended, as well as before, there were negotiations on the Abraham Accords, which in itself is a very big achievement for which our country never received recognition, never got any recognition. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each of these achievements. But for me, the real reward is sons and daughters who will grow up next to their mothers and fathers. Because millions of people no longer die in endless and inglorious wars. I'm not concerned about receiving awards, but about saving lives. We have saved millions and millions of lives thanks to these 7 wars, and we have others that we are working on. And you know this, many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York known as Donald J. Trump, I applied to renovate and restore this complex, the United Nations. I remember it well. I said back then that I would do it for $500 million and restore it beautifully. I said I would give you marble floors. They were going to give you linoleum. I was going to give you the very best. You would have mahogany walls. They were going to give you plastic. But they decided to go a different way, which turned out to be much more expensive at the time and ultimately gave a much worse result. And then I realized that they didn't understand what they were doing in construction, that their building concepts were so flawed, and the product they were going to build was so bad and expensive. It would have cost them a fortune. And I said, wait until you see. I was right about the cost overruns. They had massive cost overruns, and they spent between $2 and $4 billion on the buildings. And they didn't even get the marble floors I promised them. You go to freshen up. Did you notice that? As for me, honestly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the work. They still haven't finished. And that was many years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress even asked me to testify about the colossal waste of money, because it turned out that they themselves didn't understand what it was, but they knew it was between $2 and $4 billion, unlike the $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, in many matters at the United Nations, the same thing happens on a larger, much larger scale. It's very sad to see. Will the United Nations be able to play a productive role? I have come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any country in this assembly that is ready to join us in building a safer and more prosperous world. And this will be a world where we will be much happier, with a much better future that we are capable of achieving. But to achieve this, we must abandon the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the most serious threats in history. Today, there is no greater threat to our planet than the most powerful and destructive types of weapons ever created by man, which, as you know, the United States has quite a few of. Just like in my very first term, I have made deterring these serious threats a top priority, starting, of course, with Iran. My position on this important issue is very simple. The world's main sponsor of terrorism must never obtain the most dangerous weapons. That's why, soon after taking office, I sent a letter to the so-called Supreme Leader with a generous offer. I offered full cooperation in exchange for Iran suspending its nuclear program. The regime's response was to continue making constant threats against its neighbors, United States interests throughout the region, and some great countries that are very close by. Today, many former Iranian military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They are dead. And 3 months ago, during Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped 14 30,000-pound bombs each on a key Iranian nuclear facility, completely destroying everything. No other country in the world could have done what we did. No other country has the defense, the equipment to do what we did. We have the most powerful weapons on earth. We hate to use them, but we did what people wanted to do. 22 years. After the destruction of Iran's nuclear capability, I immediately acted as a mediator to end the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. Both sides agreed to stop fighting. As everyone knows, I was also actively involved in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. This needs to be brought to completion. This needs to be done. Islamic resistance movement has repeatedly rejected reasonable proposals. When talking about peace, we can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if encouraging the continuation of the conflict, some members of this assembly are trying to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for the terrorists of Islamic resistance movement for their atrocities. It would be a reward for these terrible crimes, including October 7th, even though they refuse to release the hostages or agree to a ceasefire. Instead of giving Islamic resistance movement and giving so much, because they have already taken so much, they have taken a great deal. This could have been resolved earlier. But instead of giving in to Islamic resistance movement is ransom demands. Those who want peace must be united in one message. Release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. We need to come together, and we will come together. We will do it. We must immediately stop the war in Gaza. We must stop it. We must do it. We must negotiate, immediately start peace negotiations. We must bring back the hostages, bring back all 20, not just 2 or 4. As you know, I am with Steve Witkoff and others who helped us. Marco Rubio brought most of them back. We were involved in all these cases, but I always said that the last 20 would be the most difficult, and that's exactly what happened. We have to bring them back now. We don't want to bring back 2, then another 2, then 1, then 3. We don't need that process. We want to bring everyone back. And also 38 bodies of the deceased. These parents came to me, they want to bring them back, and they want it very quickly and strongly. They want them as if they were alive. They want them as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I have also worked tirelessly to stop the killing and the war in Ukraine. I thought that out of the 7 wars I stopped, this one would be the easiest. Because of my relationship with President Putin, which has always been good, I thought this would be the easiest of all. But, in war, you never know what will happen. There are always many surprises, good and bad. Everyone expected Russia to win the war in 3 days, but it turned out differently. It was supposed to be just a quick minor skirmish. This doesn't make Russia look attractive. It puts them in a bad light no matter what happens next. It was something that was supposed to take just a few days, definitely less than a week. They've been fighting for about 3.5 years now and have killed between 5,000 and 7,000 young and inexperienced soldiers, mostly soldiers from both opposing sides. Every week, 5,000 to 7,000 young people are killed, and in some cities it's actually much less. That's where they launch rockets and drop drones. This war would have never started if I had been president. It was a war that should never have happened. This shows what leadership is and what bad leadership can lead to. Look at what's happened to the United States and where we are now in such a short time. The only question now is how many more lives will be lost in vain on both sides. China and India are the main sponsors of the war, continuing to buy Russian oil, but it's inexcusable that even NATO countries have not stopped purchasing a significant portion of Russian energy and energy products, which I found out about 2 weeks ago. Just think about it. They're funding a war against themselves. Who the hell has ever heard of such a thing? In case Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, the United States is fully prepared to impose a very tough round of powerful tariffs, which I believe will stop the bloodshed very quickly. But for these tariffs to be effective, European countries, all of you gathered here now, must join us and take exactly the same measures. You're nearer to that city. There's an ocean between us, but you're right beside it. Europe also needs to be more involved. They can't keep doing what they're doing now. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while fighting against Russia. They're ashamed of it, and they were very embarrassed when I found out about it. I can tell you that. They must immediately stop all purchases of energy resources from Russia. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. So I'm ready to discuss this today. We'll discuss it with the European countries that have all gathered here. I'm sure they're thrilled with what I'm saying, but that's the reality. I like to speak my mind and tell the truth. Reduce the threat of dangerous weapons. Today, I call on every country to join us in putting an end to the development of biological weapons. Biological weapons are terrible, and nuclear weapons are beyond that. We include nuclear weapons, and we want to completely stop the development and production of nuclear weapons. We know, and I have to see it all the time. So would you like to take a look? And I look at such powerful weapons that we just can never use them if we ever do use them. The world could end. There would be no United Nations. Nothing would be left. A few years ago, reckless experiments abroad led to a devastating global pandemic. And despite the global disaster, many countries continue risky research. Biological weapons and artificially created pathogens are truly very dangerous, and it's important to prevent disasters. Today, I am announcing that my administration will lead international efforts to enforce the Biological Weapons Convention. By meeting with the leaders of major countries and implementing an innovative AI-based verification system that everyone can trust. Let's hope that the United Nations can play a constructive role, and that this will become one of the first projects within the framework of AI. Let's see how good it is, because many say it could become one of the greatest achievements, but it could also be dangerous. However, it can be used with tremendous benefit, and this would be an example of that. The United Nations not only too often fails to solve the problems it should, but also creates new ones that we have to deal with. The United Nations is the main political problem of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's out of control. Your countries are being destroyed. The United Nations is funding attacks on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the United Nations allocated $372 million in its budget for cash assistance to support about 624,000 immigrants heading to the United States. Think about it. The United Nations is supporting people who are entering the United States illegally, and we have to deport them. The United Nations provided food, housing, transportation, and debit cards to illegal migrants. Can you believe that? On their way crossing through our southern border. Millions have crossed the southern border. A year ago, millions entered the country, totaling 25 million in 4 years. The incompetent Biden administration, but now we've completely stopped it. In fact, they're not even trying to come anymore because they know they won't be able to get through. But what happened is completely unacceptable. The United Nations should be preventing invasions, not creating them or funding them in the United States. We reject the idea that a huge number of people from other countries should be allowed to cross half the world, to trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause uncontrolled crime, and drain our social safety net. We have once again firmly stated that America absolutely belongs to the American people, and I strongly urge all countries to also take a firm stand in defense of their citizens and their interests. You have to do this because I see it. I'm not naming names, but I see it, and I could name each one of them individually. You are destroying your countries. They are falling apart. Europe is in serious danger. They have been hit by an invasion of illegal migrants, something no one has ever seen before. Illegal migrants have flooded into Europe. No one is doing anything to change this, to kick them out. This can't go on, and because they choose to be politically correct, they are doing absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, just a terrible mayor, and the city has changed so much, so much. Now they want to introduce Sharia law, but you're in another country, you can't do that. Immigration and suicidal energy ideas will be the downfall of Western Europe if nothing is done. This can't go on. What makes the world beautiful is the uniqueness of each country, but to preserve that, every sovereign nation must have the right to control its borders. You have the right to control your borders just like we do, and to limit the number of migrants entering your country and being paid for by the people of that country who have been there and who built that state. Blood, sweat, tears, money went into this country, and now it is being destroyed. Proud nations must protect their communities and prevent situations where their societies are overwhelmed by people they've never seen before, with different customs, religions, and ways of life. Where migrants have broken the law, filed false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, in many cases, they should be sent home immediately. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people who are struggling and show true compassion, answers will be given. We must solve the problem, and it needs to be solved in their countries, not create new problems in our own countries. And we are helping many countries a lot, countries that simply can no longer send their people. Before, they used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These huge caravans of people poured into our country completely uncontrolled and without any checks. But now it's not like that. According to data from the Council of Europe, for 2024, almost 50% of prisoners in German prisons were foreign citizens or migrants. In Austria, this figure was 53% of prisoners who were from places other than where they are now. In Greece, this figure was 54%, and in Switzerland, 72% of prisoners were people who came from outside Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who have repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crimes. The failed open borders experiment must be stopped. I can tell you I know things well. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we quickly stopped uncontrolled migration as soon as we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and expelling illegal immigrants from the United States. They stopped coming. They don't come anymore. We are credited with a lot of achievements, but they don't come anymore. It was a humanitarian act for everyone involved, because on the way here, thousands of people died every week. Women were raped. No one had ever seen anything like it. Raped, brutally beaten, raped on the way here. On this journey, it was a long walk. It was a really long, exhausting journey, and it was also a historic victory over human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people who would not have been able to make this journey. This journey was filled with death. Filled with death. Dead bodies everywhere, on roads and jungles. To get there, they go through the jungles, through such hot places that it's impossible to breathe. They died from suffocation in places so hot that it was impossible to breathe. Dead bodies everywhere. By not coming, we are saving lives. My people did a fantastic job doing what they did, and the American public agrees with that. I was very pleased to see this morning the highest ratings I've ever had. Part of that is because of what we've done at the border, and another part, I think, is related to what we've done in the economy. Joe Biden's policies have empowered murderous thugs and human traffickers. Scientists, prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Just think about it. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children who were brought into the United States under Biden, and many of them were raped, exploited, abused, and sold. Subtitle editor M. Kiev, in Kiev. Just like many others, about the missing or dead little children. And we found many of these children, and we send them back, and we have already returned them to their parents. They said no one knows who they are. They ask, where are you from? And they tell us the country. We find out, we investigate, and we return them home. And the mother and father rush to the door. They have tears in their eyes. They can't believe they're seeing their son or daughter again, their little son or daughter. We've already returned nearly 30,000 children. Any system that causes mass child trafficking is inherently evil. This is precisely what the globalist migration agenda accomplished. That's its core. As you know, those days are over in America. The Trump administration is working and continues to work to find the villains who are creating this problem, and also, as I already said, to return those 30,000 people whom we have already sent back. Now, I think we will have another such operation. We will find many more, but we won't be able to find everyone. There are more than 300,000. They disappeared or died. They disappeared or died because of those monsters who did this in order to protect our citizens. I also recognize several brutal drug cartels. And you see this. You see how it happens right before your eyes. Let's just say people don't like taking large shipments of drugs on boats. Now, there aren't that many boats sailing the seas off the coast of Venezuela. They don't want to move fast anymore. And we've pretty much stopped the import of drugs into our country by sea. We call them water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I also designated several brutal drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, as well as 2 bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the most dangerous gangs in the world. 13 in Tren de Aragua. By the way, Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and kill with impunity. They are enemies of all humanity. For this reason, we have recently begun to use the supreme power of the United States Armed Forces to destroy Venezuelan terrorists from the trafficking network led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist who brings poisonous drugs into the United States of America, this is a warning. We will wipe you off the face of the earth. This is what we do. We have no choice. We cannot allow this. They are destroying. I believe that we lost 300,000 people because of drugs, 300,000 fentanyl and other drugs. Every boat we sink would have carried enough drugs to kill more than 25,000 Americans. We won't let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We are getting rid of so-called renewable energy sources. By the way, that's just a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not powerful enough to run the factories you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. These huge wind turbines are so pathetic and so bad. They're very expensive to operate. They constantly have to be rebuilt. They start to rust and rot. It's the most expensive energy, and energy should be profitable, not a loss. You're losing money by having the government subsidize them. Without subsidies, it's impossible to implement them. Most of them are built in China. I give China credit. They build them, but they have very few wind power plants themselves, so why are they building them? They sell wind turbines worldwide, but rarely use them. They rely on coal, gas, and other sources, and don't favor wind turbines themselves, though they enjoy selling them. Europe, on the other hand, still has a long way to go, because many countries are on the verge of collapse due to the green energy agenda. And I give credit to Germany. Germany was led down a very dangerous path. By the way, both in terms of immigration and in terms of energy, they were switching to green energy and becoming bankrupt, but new leadership came in, and they returned to fossil fuels and nuclear energy, which is good. Now it's safe and everything can be done properly. But they went back to their previous policy and opened many different energy plants producing power, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They said what's happening is a disaster. They were switching completely to green energy, fully green energy. It's a complete failure. That's what it means, and it's not politically correct. I'll be heavily criticized for these words, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York. I feel safer. Crime. We are reducing the crime rate and crime. Washington, District of Columbia, used to be the crime capital of America. It's totally different after 12 days. It's an absolutely safe city. Everyone goes out for dinner. They go to restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with you or without you, and nothing will happen. My people did a fantastic job, and yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard restored order. They weren't politically correct, but they were effective. We deported 1,700 professional criminals, sent them back to where they came from, to the countries they were originally from, or put them in prison. Washington District of Columbia is now an absolutely safe city, and I invite you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we can walk there. We don't need to wear bulletproof vests. We'll just walk there, right from the White House. Many of the countries we're talking about have given up their powerful advantage in oil and gas, for example, by actually shutting down oil production in the North Sea. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen used to be the oil capital of Europe, and there are huge oil reserves in the North Sea that haven't been discovered yet. And I was with the Prime Minister, whom I respected a lot, and I told him, you have the greatest asset in your hands. They basically shut it down by making the taxes so high that no developer, no oil company can go there. They still have huge oil reserves, and more importantly, they have huge oil reserves that haven't even been discovered yet. What a great asset that is for the United Kingdom. I hope the Prime Minister is listening, since I've told him this for 3 days straight, and it's all he's heard. North Sea oil, the North Sea, because I want them to do well. I don't want to see them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside anymore with wind turbines and huge solar panels that take up 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we won't let that happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environment Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would lead to a global catastrophe. He said it would be irreversible, just like any nuclear holocaust. That's what they were saying at the United Nations. Here's what happened next. A United Nations representative stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire countries could disappear from the map due to global warming. That isn't happening. It used to be called global cooling. Back in the 1920s and 1930s, they said global cooling would destroy the world. We have to do something. They claimed global warming would destroy the world, but then temperatures dropped. So now they just call it climate change, because that way they can't be wrong. It's climate change. Because if it gets warmer or colder, whatever happens, it's climate change. In my opinion, it's the biggest scam ever pulled in the world, climate change. Whatever happens, you're involved in it. No more global warming, no more global cooling. The predictions made by the United Nations, and many for bad reasons, turned out to be wrong. They were made by foolish people who cost their countries fortunes and didn't give those countries a single chance for success. If you don't get rid of this green scam, your country will fail. I'm actually very good at predicting events. You know, they even said during the campaign that they had the best-selling cap. Trump was right about everything, and I'm not saying this to brag, but it's true. I was right about everything, and I'm telling you, if you don't get rid of the green energy scam, your country will fail. If you don't stop people you've never seen before, people you have nothing in common with, your country will fail. I am the President of the United States, but I care about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And it hurts me to see it being destroyed by energy policies and immigration. This two-headed monster is destroying everything in its path, and they can't allow it anymore. You do this because you want to be kind, you want to be politically correct, and by doing so, you are destroying your own legacy. They must immediately and decisively take control of the out-of-control immigration disaster and the fake energy crisis before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a scam invented by people with bad intentions, and they are on a path of complete destruction. You know, a few years ago, the carbon footprint was a very, very important topic. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get on Air Force One, a huge Boeing 747, and not a new one, but an old one, with old engines that release everything into the atmosphere. He talked about the carbon footprint, that we have to do something. And then he would get on the plane and fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he would get back on that big, beautiful plane and fly back. And again, he would talk about global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a scam. Europe, after incurring huge expenses, reduced its carbon footprint by 37. Just think about that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You deprived yourselves of many jobs, closed a lot of factories, but reduced your carbon footprint by 37. However, all these sacrifices and much more were completely negated and then surpassed by a global increase of 54. Most of this comes from China and other countries which are thriving around China and now produce more carbon dioxide than all the other developed countries in the world combined. So all these countries are working so hard to reduce their carbon footprint, which, by the way, is complete nonsense. You know, it's interesting, in the United States, we have radicalized environmentalists. They want factories to stop, everything to come to a halt. No cows. We don't want cows. It seems like they want to get rid of all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable. And do you have that too? But, you know, we have a strong border and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape becomes amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the cleanest air, and I think we really do have very clean air, we have the cleanest air in many, many years. But the problem is that in other countries, for example, in China, where the air is a bit heavy, it blows over to us. And no matter what you do here, the air up above still gets very dirty because it comes from other countries where the air isn't as clean, and environmentalists refuse to admit it. It's the same with trash in Asia. They throw most of their garbage right into the ocean, and in a week or two it floats right past Los Angeles. Have you seen that? Huge masses of garbage, almost too big to do anything about. They float past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then someone gets in trouble for dropping a cigarette butt on the beach. It's all madness. The main result of these harsh green energy policies isn't helping the environment, but rather the redistribution of production and industrial activity. From developed countries that follow these insane rules to polluting countries that break the rules and profit from this situation, they profit from this situation. Electricity bills in Europe are now 4 to 5 times higher than in China and 2 to 3 times higher than in the United States, while our bills are significantly decreasing. You've probably noticed that gas prices here have dropped significantly. You know, we have a saying, storm baby storm, and that's exactly what we're doing. In a year, they'll be much lower, but they've already dropped a lot over the past year. As a result, air conditioners are a real rarity in some of these countries because the cost of electricity is so high, whereas in the United States, for example, the situation is completely different and there are actually a lot of air conditioners there. About 1,300 people die from heat each year. In Europe, over 175,000 die annually due to heat, as high electricity costs make air conditioning inaccessible. What is this anyway? This isn't Europe. This isn't the Europe I love and know. And all of this is under the pretext of supposedly stopping global warming fraud. This entire globalist concept, according to which successful industrial countries must inflict suffering on themselves and radically destroy their own societies, must be completely and unconditionally rejected, and this must be done immediately. That's why in America, I pulled the country out of the fake Paris Climate Agreement, where, by the way, America was paying much more than all the other countries, while others weren't paying at all. China wasn't supposed to pay until 2030, and Russia was given an old standard, the 1990 standard, which is easy to meet. And the United States was supposed to pay almost $1 trillion. I said, this is another scam. In fact, for many years, the United States had been exploited by the whole world, but that's no longer the case. As you may have noticed, I launched a large-scale energy production and signed historic executive orders to search for oil, but we don't really need to search much because we have more oil than any other country in the world, oil and gas, including coal. We have more resources than any other country. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal today. With coal, you can do things now that were impossible 10 or 15 years ago. So I have a rule in the White House. Never use the word coal. Use the phrase clean, beautiful coal. It sounds better. But we are ready to provide any country with abundant and affordable energy resources if you need them, and most of you really do need them. We export energy worldwide and are currently the top exporter in the United States. We want trade and active commercial exchange with all countries, with everyone. We want to help countries. We are going to help countries, but it also has to be fair and reciprocal. The problem with trade is very similar to the problem with climate. The countries that followed the rules and had all their factories plundered, it's really sad to watch. They were broken. They were broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now imposing tariffs on other countries. And just like these tariffs were imposed on us for many years, they were imposed on us uncontrollably. We used tariffs as a protection mechanism during the Trump administration. During my first term, hundreds of billions were collected in tariffs. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and right now we have very low inflation. The only difference is that hundreds of billions of dollars are coming into our country. But that's exactly how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and remains sustainable in the future. We also use tariffs to protect our sovereignty and security around the world, including against countries that have taken advantage of previous United States administrations for decades. Administrations including ZOS, the most corrupt, incompetent administration ever, led by sleepy Joe Biden. Now Brazil is facing major tariffs in response to its unprecedented attempts to interfere with the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and other people. Through censorship, repression, abuse of power for personal gain, judicial corruption, and persecution of political critics. In the United States, I feel a bit uncomfortable saying this because I have to admit, I was coming in as the leader of Brazil was leaving. We saw each other. I saw him. He saw me, and we hugged. And then, I think you can believe that in 2 minutes, I have to say this. We actually agreed to meet next week. We didn't have much time to talk. It was about 20 seconds, if you think about it. I'm glad I waited because it didn't go too well. But we talked, we had a good conversation, and we agreed to meet next week. If anyone's interested, he seemed like a really nice person to me. He liked me, and I liked him too. But as for you, I only do business with people I like. If I don't like someone, I don't work with them. If I don't like someone, I just don't. For about 39 seconds, we had great chemistry. That's a good sign. But also in the past, Brazil, just think about it, unfairly imposed tariffs on our country. But now, thanks to our tariffs, we're responding to them, and we're responding very tough. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say this, but Brazil is doing very badly and will continue to do badly. They can only succeed when they work together with us in close cooperation. Without us, they will fail, just like others before them. That's the truth. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence. This is a testament to the enduring strength of American freedom and spirit. We will also proudly host the Fédération Internationale de Football Association World Cup in 2026, and soon after that, the 2028 Olympic Games, which will be very exciting. I hope you all will come. I hope that countless people from all over the world will take part in these great events. These will be great celebrations of freedom and human achievement, and together we can rejoice in the wonders of history that began on July 4th. In 1776, we became a beacon for all nations. That truly is amazing. What happened on that day? Subtitles of new meetings with the United States of America in honor of this significant anniversary. I hope that all the countries that draw inspiration from our example will join us in renewing our commitment to the values and those principles that we truly cherish. Together, let us defend freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Let us protect religious freedom, including the most persecuted religion on the planet today, which is called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish the qualities that have made each of our countries so special, incredible, and outstanding. In conclusion, I just want to repeat that both migration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy are destroying much of the free world and a significant part of our planet. Countries that value freedom are vanishing rapidly due to their policies on these two issues. If you want to be great again, you need strong borders and traditional energy sources, no matter where you come from, north or south, east or west, from far away or nearby. Every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that make each nation great and unique, unlike anything else in human history or anywhere else on earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo, and from Amsterdam to New York itself, we stand on the shoulders of leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who conquered and built our beloved countries, all of our countries. Thanks to their courage, spirit, and skill, our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and traveled across vast plains. They rushed into thundering battles, they faced deadly dangers, and they were soldiers, farmers, working warriors, explorers, and patriots. They turned settlements into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, and small islands into mighty empires. Are you a part of all this? They were the defenders of their people who never gave up and never gave in. Their values defined our national identity, and their vision shaped our great destiny. Everyone in this hall is a part of this in their own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and myths, the triumphs, the legacy of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for the homeland, which they defended with pride, then with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations they built belongs to each of us. So let us fulfill our sacred duty to our people and our citizens together. Let us protect their borders, ensure their security, preserve their culture, treasures, and traditions, and fight, fight, fight for their precious dreams and for their cherished freedoms in friendship and a beautiful vision. Let's all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet we all share, a planet of peace in a world that will be richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. It's possible, it will happen, and I hope it can start right now. At this very moment, we will change everything for the better. We will make our countries better, safer, more beautiful, and we will take care of our people. Thank you very much. It was an honor for me. God bless the people of the world. Thank you very much. Goodbye. On behalf of the Assembly, I sincerely thank the President of the United States.